Good morning, brothers and sisters in Israel. Welcome to Awakening Israel. I know the title is kind of cumbersome, and there's a lot of other similarly entitled channels out there. Thanks for joining me once again. I want to cover this Bible just a little bit. And this is the best Bible that we have today. It's probably the best Bible produced in the last 2,300 years. Just about 2,300 years since Ptolemy II made a great error. He took out the proper name of Yahweh from the Bible, approximately 275 BC. He was translating the Bible from Aramaic and Hebrew into Greek. It wasn't just an intellectual exercise. It was very purposeful. Most of the Israelites had left Israel, had been taken out of Israel, taken captive by the Assyria. And they were settled on the opposite side of Syria, between the land of the Assyrians and the land of the Medes. I'll say Assyrians or Syrians. It's the same people. So they were settled on 3 different locations mentioned in the Bible, and those are mentioned approximately 5 times. The only other thing that's mentioned 5 times in the Bible is when Yahweh God tells his children, tells the Israelites, not to intermarry with the people of the land. Why? Because the Canaanites were descendants of Cain. Cain was fathered by a fallen angel named Gadriel. And they had satanic DNA in them. Literal children of a fallen angel. Now, before you think that's all there is to it, I'm going to tell you that there were 200 fallen angels at that time, back then. 200 of them assembled on Mount Hermon and did this conspiracy where they were going to go into the daughters of men because the daughters of men were fair. They were attracted to them, and they were going to take all that they wanted to wife. They were going to have sex and reproduce with all that they wanted. And they conspired on Mount Hermon, and they even agreed in their conspiracy that they wouldn't even discuss it among themselves once they left the mountain, lest they be discovered. So when was that? I don't for sure know. But I can tell you this. We're on to them finally, and we understand what happened. However, we only have one of the fallen angels covered in the Bible, from what I can see, which means there's almost 200 of them out there, and there's the offspring of a couple hundred more. So it is a much more complicated picture than what you think. You can't just trace down genealogies. At this point, you have to go by their fruit. You have to go by their behavior, what they do, their actions. And don't pay attention as much to what somebody claims they're about, somebody says they want to do, someone says they're doing, but pay attention to what they actually do, the actual behavior, because that's what it comes down to. I was trained in behavioral psychology. It does come down to behavior. And I know you're going to say, well, there are these people out there that do hate crimes. Well, doesn't every crime have an element of hate into it? So what is the purpose of your hate crime? Your purpose of your hate crime is to discriminate against a particular race of people, if you will, a particular class of people. It is hate, and it is criminal in itself. You do not need anything as inane, as uncommon sense as a hate crime. You shouldn't be sentencing somebody based upon what you think they think. You should do it based upon what they do. That's the criminal act. You know, this other thing is just kind of hunting down witches. So I've got out my proper name version of the King James Bible in large print. One of the things I like about this Bible is it's got the preface. It has beginning commentary, if you will. It's limited, and it really is focused upon the Word and history, upon truth. And here in the preface on what is, well, it appears to be the second page, if you will, even though it's Roman numeral 12, I have written down here, Ptolemy the second, 275, with a little squiggly line in front of it, approximately 275 BC, in Alexandria, Egypt. And Ptolemy the second was the offspring of the general Ptolemy, one of the 4 generals of Alexander. And when the beast system was broken up into 4 pieces and his children didn't inherit it, Ptolemy was one of those. He probably got the strongest part of that kingdom of Alexander the Great. Probably got the most magnificent part of it since he was in Egypt and Alexandria. The term proper name is used in the proper name version of the King James Bible, denotes the use of a proper noun rather than a common noun. For the name of God, a proper noun, which is also called a proper name, is a noun that designates a particular person, place, or thing, and is usually not preceded by an article such as the. A common noun, however, does not identify a specific individual and is often preceded by an article. It refers to any or all of a group or class. And so in the Bible, we have several words that were translated into fewer words. Mainly, we have the name of God and the many names of God getting translated into one word, God. And so that just the simplification kept happening over the years. And so you don't end up with like Adonai and all those other, really beautiful names. You don't have those in the English version, but in the Greek versions, if you will. But you don't have Yahweh in there anymore in particular. And that was a big error. Why is that an error? Well, if you want to abide by the 10 Commandments, which you're going to find in Exodus 20, it says, "And God spoke all these words, saying, I am Yahweh your God." So he tells you his name right there. "Which brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods, small g, before me." So, shouldn't you know his name, his proper name? Shouldn't you know the name Yahweh? And of course, Yahweh is the modern English, anglicized form of the name, and it's Yahweh. In Paleo Hebrew, there were no vowels, and so there were only 4 letters. So you had to read it in context. You had to know what was implied in order to be able to read that language, to understand that language, and to speak it. So we refer to this as the tetragrammaton, meaning 4 letters. Tetra, 4. YHVH, which we actually call a W today. YHWH. So the original language was YHVH. Now, I think this is important. And we know that Ptolemy II made the error way before the birth of the Messiah. And so the New Testament didn't exist then. So we can't say that he made the error in it. But what's very interesting is that it appears as though we have historical errors given to us. Whatever level of deception they can take this to throw us off, they do. You know that. You might as well just assume that. And so we're told that the original Old Testament was written in Hebrew. Actually, I think most of it was written in Aramaic, very closely related language. But we're told the New Testament was all in Greek. Yet we have got some famous people in history. Oh, that famous physicist, I keep trying to remember. Sir Isaac Newton. Sir Isaac Newton said that he had read the New Testament in both the Greek and the Aramaic. It's my belief, I could be wrong, that the New Testament was written in Aramaic and translated to Greek. However, it's very likely that the letters written to the Greeks were written in Greek. And the letters written to to Jerusalem, to the descendants in Jerusalem, were written in Aramaic. And then some of this was in Hebrew as well. And some parts of this Bible will tell you. They'll tell you that the Nebuchadnezzar's ambassadors spoke in Hebrew, the formal high language of the people of Jerusalem. And the king begged him, don't speak in Hebrew, because he didn't want the people to hear and understand what they were in for. He didn't want them panicking the people, and the fellow went ahead and spoke in Hebrew anyway. I'm sure he was ordered to do that as part of the psychological aspects of that warfare of sieging the city of Jerusalem. And I want to tell you something. When Nebuchadnezzar went up against Jerusalem, the claim was, your God has sent me. And so this was being blamed on Yahweh. In other words, Yahweh can use whoever he wants to go after his people and correct them. And he's done that several times. He used the leaders for the Assyrians to do it. And even the Assyrians said, your God told me to do this to you. Your God sent me. Which brings us to another principle, that all of our leaders are chosen by Yahweh, Creator, Father. Yeah. And so we look today at the United States of America and look at the leadership in D.C. We must be pretty bad for Yahweh to stick us with what we have today. Not many of them are prizes at all. Even those that a lot of you seem to revere and worship aren't very good in my opinion. So Yahweh chooses your presidents. I don't like that principle. It bothers me immensely. Am I that bad that you're going to give me such wicked men? Yeah. And it says very clearly in the agreement made at Mount Sinai, and there's a double witness on this, meaning it is in both. It's in two places in the Bible. It's in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. They tell you what the results are going to be if you live according to the Ten Commandments, and what the results are going to be if you fail to live according to the Ten Commandments. So that's a double witness in the Bible, which means basically, Yahweh, Yeshua, they want us to pay attention to this. They want us to learn it. But when it comes to the fact that the northern house of Israel was settled in the far side of Syria, between the Assyrians and the Medes, that's mentioned 5 times in the Bible. Those three landmarks, Habor, River, or Harbor, is the one that stands out in my mind. But it's the 3 landmarks mentioned 5 times. And the only other time you get a quintuple witness in the Bible, something is mentioned 5 times, is when Yahweh tells his children, do not take the daughters of the land for sons for your wives, and do not give your daughters to the people of the land for wives for their sons. Don't intermarry with them. That's mentioned 5 times. And of course, that's something that we should really be paying attention to, because there was reason for that. And it did come down to genetics. It come down to abnormalities. And there was something wrong with every one of those populations that Joshua was ordered to destroy, and he didn't do it. So they are now blended into the rest of humanity, into the rest of the world, and we're dealing with their offspring today. So that's who the bad guys are. So you have the descendants of Eve on both sides. Eve was the mother of all the living. I think that refers to this fact. And you have the descendants of Gadriel, the fallen angel, through Cain, who was a murderer. And you have the descendants of Adam, who was Yahweh's son. It says that clearly in the Bible. So whenever somebody asks me if Jesus was the Son of God, sometimes as a reflex, I'll say no. It says clearly in the Bible, Adam was the Son of God. Well, both things can be true, and they can be mysteries at the same doggone time. And I don't like using the name Jesus. I prefer the term Yeshua, and I prefer the name Yeshua, and I prefer the term the Messiah, because that's what he is. And then, as far as him being called the Christ, I don't think I can find it, but I'll try to flip through here and see if I can find it. This should be marked, highlighted, dog-eared, yellow highlight, bright fluorescent highlight, and red ink for an underline, and the page should be dog-eared, because this stuff is important to me. Oh, by the way, here we are, Luke, the last verse of Luke chapter 3, the reverse genealogy, which was the son of Enos, which was the son of Seth, which was the son of Adam, which was the son of God. That's where I get that from. So you see, Scripture supports quite a few things that appear to be at odds with one another. And it's up to us to figure out how these things are actually true at the same time. So you have to be very open-minded. And I don't think I'm going to be able to find this, but I'm going to try to find it very quickly here. No, it's not in Book of Luke. It's in another book. And I'll continue to look for it as we talk. Oh, here we go. Here we go. It's in John chapter 1, verse 41. He first found his own brother Simon and said to him, "We have found the Messiah," which is, being interpreted, the Christ. So here he's called the Messiah and he's called the Christ. So that's an important mention. I think that's the only time that he's called Christ. And then we have the word Christian, which is important because one of my older brothers, who's been reading the Bible a lot longer than I have, told me one time, just offhand, every time he says something, I would try to figure out how it's true. He says, there really should be no such thing called Christianity, the religion of Christianity. And of course, I sat there dumbfounded with that, thinking, "Oh, come on, man, you got to be kidding me." And I knew better than to, than to do anything but to go look it up, and I did. And what I found was that most people have misinterpreted the Bible and what it says in Acts. It said in Acts at Antioch, there they were first called Christians. And most people say there they first called themselves Christians. And that's not the way the Bible reads. The Bible reads that they were called Christians by the Roman pagans around them. And so when you read it in context, you come to understand that it was a slur, the equivalent of a racial slur, to call somebody a Christian. So they were being derogatory towards them, putting them down, mocking them by calling them Christians. And if you think about it, Christian means crucified, I believe, which means hung from a tree. And it says in there, everybody hung from a tree is condemned. Yet, here we have, okay, Acts chapter 11, verse 26. And when he had found him, he brought him to Antioch. And it came to pass that a whole year they assembled themselves with the congregation and taught many people. And the disciples were called Christians first in Antioch. They were called Christians. They didn't call each other Christians. The Roman pagans around them who believed in many gods and thought these people were weird. They were dumb because they just didn't respect all the gods. I mean, that's not right. What a horrible life to have when you don't have all the gods working for you, you know. It's hard to say, hard to put that into proper perspective. And then the next time we have the word Christian mentioned is again in an interesting place, and I believe this is by the judge, and he's making a statement to Paul. And I thought it was in Acts, but I'm not seeing it. Yes, it is in Acts. I'll find it. It can't be that hard to find. There we go. Acts chapter 26, verse 28. Then Agrippa said to Paul, "Almost you persuade me to be a Christian." And that's the second time the word Christian is mentioned in the entire Bible. And Christ is only mentioned once. I sometimes joke and I say you should tag this with the son of a bitch on the end of it so that you can get the proper context, and I'll read it to you. Almost you persuade me to be a Christian son of a bitch. I know, it sounds horrible, doesn't it? But basically, that's what Agrippa's saying. Paul, you almost convinced me to be one of you lowlifes. One of you poor people that don't understand the gods and oh my God, are going through life with just one? How impoverished is that? This is kind of an advanced lesson. I hope you're being flexible and staying with me on this. But that's really all I have to tell you about this. There's a couple more things I should mention. That Yeshua never calls himself the Christ, and he never tells people to practice Christianity. Yeshua himself refers to himself as the way. It is the way. And before that, earlier in the New Testament, he refers to it as the faith of our fathers. So if Yeshua, those are the words from Yeshua that are recorded here in the Bible, if those are accurate, then I think we should be calling it the faith of our fathers. I think we should be calling it the way. I think those are the proper ways, the proper names to refer to this faith based upon the Bible. I think that's basically what I wanted to make a point of. So we basically have invented Christianity from the Bible, and we've misread things very subtly in some ways and not so subtly in other ways. So we've actually invented a faith. Now, where I myself have problems is that my understanding of salvation is probably a problem, and I'll share that with you. It's a little bit confounding because I do attend another Bible study with somebody who knows it much better than I do, and the fellow pulls for the broader aspects of it that indicate that the belief is the important thing, and I believe that works are important as well, and I can point to passages and come up with a perfectly intellectual argument that's rational. For instance, Simon the sorcerer of Acts, he definitely had faith. He definitely believed. He was baptized. Was he saved? I don't think his works helped him one bit. I don't think he made it. And it says in there, you work out your salvation. So I believe that's referring to your behavior, your life, your lifestyle, your choices. So I recommend to people that they pray for guidance and that they may be shown clearly the best choice and that they may be granted the resources internally, the internal fortitude, so they can go with that best choice, even though it seems to be come at a higher price. It's not the easy way quite often. So I find myself having to do that, and then I end up back in the book of Job, which is the oldest book in the Bible. It's older than the book of Genesis. It definitely was written during a previous earth age, in my opinion. And it also gives us some indicators as to where we came from, where our people came from out in the universe. It's got the constellations and the planets mentioned in there. It also mentions that Adam was placed upon the earth. I think that's an important concept. But the main thing from the book of Job was Job's wife always told him, curse God and die. Curse God and end the suffering and die. And Job's response to his wife was, should we not take the bad with the good? Should we fail to praise, Creator, Father God, unless He just gives us good stuff? And the basic lesson, I believe, from Job is that we have a limited perspective and a limited understanding. We don't get to see the big picture. We don't get to understand what impact this has on us down the road, or even what's next. But we just have to go with the greatest value that we can bring to our lives, the greatest good, the decision for the best, with the hopes that it will produce fruit. It will produce the blessings. So that's what I get from the book of Job. So when I have a loss, there are times in which I just beg, give me the ability to tolerate this loss. And I've had some significant losses. So I beg for that ability. Help me to tolerate this. Help me to be able to, not take any horrible action because I've been wronged, because my boundaries have been violated. And the book of Job is really a nice book. Here we have, in this Bible, we have section 3, poetic section of the Bible. It's under the poetic section. This is an overview. In the book of Job, Job was called a perfect and upright man who feared God and shunned evil. He only did that which he thought to be right, even trying to cover for the sins of his children. Satan appeared before Yahweh among the sons of God, and Yahweh gave him permission to put Job through trials that included afflicting his family, his possessions, and then him personally. Even through his great trials, Job continued to trust Yahweh as his Redeemer. His friends sought to comfort him by suggesting that his afflictions came because of his sins. Job repented when he learned that the greatness of his wisdom and power, that the greatness of the wisdom and power of Yahweh was beyond his ability to question. Yahweh blessed him and restored him to him more than he had lost. Well, I think that's probably a good place to end this. And I don't even have a good title for this. I guess the big question, the big topic is, should there be a religion called Christianity? Should we be calling ourselves Christians? Or should we be followers of the way? What should we call ourselves? What's the proper way to call ourselves? Do we call ourselves by those who worship the faith of our fathers, those who are followers of the way? I don't know. If you've got any idea, any clarification, put it down below. I think it's important that we know Yahshua's proper name and that we use it. I believe the name means he who saves the anointed. So there is saving in the name. It's part of the meaning of it. However, as was pointed out in the Bible lesson today through the service that I attend over the phone, the real Redeemer is Yahweh. Yahweh's the Redeemer. So it's just kind of interesting. It is a mystery. There's a little bit of confusion there, I have to admit. And so we just have to struggle with that. I do believe that someday we're going to understand every word that's in here. And that will be when Yahshua joins us again and we got him handy to explain it to us. That's going to be quite a day when we have all the understanding. And we're going down the road without quite a bit of that understanding right now. So that does require faith. That's for sure. Yet we have to act upon that. We have to behave according to our beliefs. If we fail to do that, then what good are we? And I believe Yahweh would prefer obedience to his law rather than sacrifice. I think that's another important concept. He'd rather we be obedient than offer sacrifices. Okay. I think that we need to realize that we're not going to get our republic back unless we return to Yahweh. This nation was founded by a bunch of scholars who were Bible readers. They knew this thing in and out, forwards and backwards, pretty much. Oh, there were some guys back then, Daniel Webster, who would take the scriptures to the Congress and would read it one way to them and prove one thing by them, and the next day go back and do the opposite to them and prove the other argument. And I think that was a good exercise. One thing's for sure, I bet it got their attention and had them talking about things. I also think that not only that, it sharpened them up, and they probably thought more clearly and came to better decisions. May Yahweh bless. May Yahweh make America good again.